Greetings and welcome to Transit Ministries, a Bible-based ministry for men and for those who walk with men. We are in the process of going through the subject of fatherhood, and we have determined 5 profiles. And we say that we become the kind of fathers that are affected by the fatherhood that we received when we were sons. And the first profile is the unfathered son. The second profile is the underfathered son. The third profile is the misfathered son. And the fourth profile is the overfathered son. And the last profile, which is what we all should aim for, is the adequately fathered son. And so, my brother, as you go about being the dad that you would have liked to have to your son, I want you to stay close to this series. This is day 4. In other words, this is the 4th video in our series. And I hope that you have watched the first 3, because this will make more sense to you. You can still watch this one, but please be sure to watch the first, second, and the third videos. So what is overfathering? Overfathering essentially is giving too much of a good thing to your son. And most of us, so let me just pause and talk about the difference between these 3. There is underfathering, there is misfathering, and there is overfathering. Imagine a straight line which goes in the direction of appropriate fathering. If you go in that direction and go all the way to the 100-meter mark, then that is adequate fathering. If you go in that direction but fall short, that is under-fathering. You were going in the right direction, but you didn't go far enough. You didn't go all the way. But if you go in a totally different direction, that is misfathering. Now, if you go in the right direction, pass the 100 mark, and start to give diminishing returns, in other words, give so much in the name of doing a good thing, that is overfathering. Let me give you what characterizes that in terms of examples. If you have a menu of things that you should eat that are good for you and things that are not good for you, is it possible that you could eat too much of the things that are good for you? Too much in terms of the quantity. In terms of doing it too frequently. It is possible. So that is the concept of overfathering. So most of us overfather because of certain issues that we faced in our own childhood. For example, giving your son anything and everything he wants, not necessarily what he needs. And you do it thinking that you're doing the right thing, because the Bible tells us that who, being an earthly father, would give their son a snake when the son asked for a fish? Who would give their son stones when the son asked for bread? And so this whole idea of giving the son what is good for them is all good, but you need to get to a stage where you can identify the difference between how much is enough and how much is excessive. How do we know that excess is not good? Ecclesiastes 7 verse 16 makes it very clear to us that too much of a good thing is not good. Let's come back to our model. Our model says that as fathers, we should not have an excuse, because clearly Even though we may not have had the right father here on earth, but we have our heavenly Father, who is our greatest standard. And he is our greatest standard because he is both a father and a son. Because he is the Father to us, and he is a son to God the Father. So he teaches us how to become a father, and he teaches us how to become a son. All the principles are in the life of Jesus Christ. However, the choice is ours. Most of us have refused to subjugate ourselves, to submit to his authority. And that in that way, we are passing up a chance to learn fatherhood from the best, to sit at the feet of Jesus and learn how to become a good father. So I'll still taking you through some examples. One is giving your son anything that he wants. The second one is just defending your son in everything. He picks up a quarrel with his mother over something. Maybe he didn't do the dishes after eating, or he didn't take his plate to the kitchen, or he didn't perform some chores that were supposed to be given. And each time they are discussing issues, you're always taking your son's side and always defending him because you feel that that is appropriate fathering. That is actually overprotecting the son. So it's important to do that because we get to stages where those of us who have dealt with this in school scenarios, you find a place where you go to a school and the father is called in, your son did this, and the father says, not my son, not my son, not my son. My son would never do a thing like that. Something wrong with you. Who is it? You know, some fathers, even in the case where there's a pregnancy and the son is being fingered, as pointed at by the girl accusing him of being the father of the child, this father says no. And then they go for all the way to the end and they do the tests, and it is seen that is it. So we need to have the balance. The issue here is an issue of balance. The intent may be noble. So what are the consequences of overfathering your son? The consequences of overfathering your son are as follows. Your son ends up with an entitlement mentality. Because you have protected him in everything, defended, helped him to hide certain things that were not right from his mother, from everyone else. He knows that he can count on you, whether he's right or wrong. You will defend him even in crime. He then has a sense of entitlement and walks out into the world expecting the world to owe him a favor in every single interaction he has with everyone. You obviously haven't done your son a favor, because that entitlement mentality will not help. The sense of balance is lost. That's the second thing. Totally lost. Some of the consequences of overfathering. Totally loses the sense of balance. It doesn't understand where to strike the balance between working for it and getting it for free. So the whole issue of I get this for free or do I work for it is lost, because his belief is that things should just come to him. He's so used to things coming to him because his dad taught him that, both verbally and experientially. Remember, we're talking about the development at all four levels: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. The next thing is we have an issue with the role of the mother. Because when you overfather your son, what then happens is that you shrink, you squeeze, you reduce, you minimize the role of the mother in the upbringing of the son. And yet what we need to understand is that our sons need the input of a mother in their upbringing. The mother has a role to play. Now, let me talk to mothers for a little while here. Mothers, do not feel guilty that a lot of people will say, you don't understand the boy. You don't even have to try too hard. It's not really about understanding the boy. That's not the point. The point is, it is enough that you present yourself as that parent who is always there when the son needs her. So when the son needs a place to cry, when the son needs an alternative opinion, it's important that you're just there. That's enough. And the fathers, now I'm talking to fathers. Fathers, understand that your wife has to play a role, or the woman in your life has to play a role in raising sons. So the fact that the mother doesn't understand the intricacies of how to bring up a son is not really that disastrous. The most important thing is for the mother to be there, for the son to have access to the mother in terms of the emotional support. Now, let's look at the next consequence, which is overcompensation as a cause because of your own father's issue. So most of us as fathers, we overcompensate. So I, let's say, was deprived of a number of things by my father when I was growing up. What then happens is that I end up overcompensating. I end up doing so much, giving my son everything that I never had. And maybe he doesn't quite need that, but I end up doing so because I am making up through him for what I lost. And it's like someone talking French and someone talking German and trying to communicate. I'm trying to make up to him using what I lost, and I'm not really adding any value. And as I said again, in so doing, I'm squeezing out the role of the mother. Sometimes there's also overcompensating because of my own mistakes. Some of us, or my own guilt. So my father's mistakes or my own guilt. Find that I'm guilty of certain omissions or commissions, certain things I've done. And because my son understands that, and because I cannot fathom the idea that I am just simply human. Yes, I may be a father figure, but I'm just human and I'm not perfect. So instead of accepting that, I then go forward and I bombard or sort of crowd my son with the need for him to accept all these things because of my own guilt. So I start to over spoil him. And finally, trying to please or compete with others as a way of trying to enhance my own standing in the eyes of my son. Let's look at the model that I talked about in the previous video, because it's relevant on this video as well. I talked about it on video number 3. That there is nothing more powerful as a role model than the same gender parent. So for the son, the father is the role model. Nothing more powerful as a role model than the same gender parent. Nothing more powerful as emotional support base than the opposite gender parent. So the son needs both the role model and the emotional support. And usually that is where the co-parenting actually happens. So an entitlement mentality is the first consequence. The whole issue of lack of balance is the other consequence. The whole issue of under-mothering because of over-fathering is the third area that deprives the son. And we've also treated within that the obstacles of and some of the causes, which is overcompensation because of my own guilt, or the guilt of arising out of my father's mistakes, or indeed trying to please other people, and eventually finding myself spoiling my son unduly. So as we continue to talk about the relevance of the mother here, we cannot ignore this fact. The Bible is very clear in 2 Timothy 1, verse 5. It talks about Timothy's mother and his grandmother as people who participated in the upbringing of Timothy. And so we cannot ignore the influence and importance and involvement of the women in bringing up our boys. So in case anyone had a doubt, there you have it. So let's get to the solutions now. In terms of the solutions, here is what we have. We need the first and foremost, as a solution to overfathering, we need to recognize the excess. As I mentioned, Ecclesiastes 7:16 makes it clear that too much of anything is wrong. So we should not overdo the fathering. So recognizing the excess is crucial. The second thing that we need to do is to draw up a very clear plan to correct the excess. Now, the complication with this is that because the son would have been benefiting from this action, he might be resistant to you starting to take away some of the benefits that he has been enjoying. And also, the mother may have been telling you that, you know what, you're overdoing this, you're overspoiling your son, and you may be resistant. So recognize the excess and be prepared to actually humbly submit and acknowledge that indeed I made a mistake. And you start to plan on how to withdraw some of these overindulgences that you are affording your son. Also, face your wife and explain, or the woman in your life, and explain to her that indeed you were right. There's nothing wrong with admitting. So this calls for some apology. And do not think that you lose any dignity or any stature in apologizing. If anything, you actually gain respect. And your son will empathize with you, because sons actually feel for their fathers when fathers have to apologize. And don't think that your wife always wants to say, I told you so. Even if she did say that, that's good humble pie for you to accept that, yes, we do make mistakes. When are you ever going to accept that you also make mistakes? So this is one opportunity that allows you to accept that you've made a mistake. And so let's look at some of the scriptures that allow us to then move that action in. So you move that into action. So you've accepted, you've recognized the excess, you have apologized, you've drawn up a plan. Now you're getting into it, and you need to have the scriptures. We've talked about the one that actually talks about the importance of understanding that excess is not always too good. But let's also look at a scripture that makes it clear that discipline and love go together. In Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 6, the Bible makes it very clear that the Lord chastens or disciplines the person that he loves and the one that he accepts as a son. So we need to understand that, and your son needs to understand this. I want to share also the scriptures that we talked about that make it very clear that we need to do things that our sons may not necessarily enjoy. And we need to do it as disciplinarians. The Bible makes it clear that if you spare the rod, you have spoiled the child. So, recognize the excess, apologize, draw up a plan to correct it. Understand that this might put you in a collision course or make you eat humble pie with your wife or with your son. And also understand that discipline is part of love according to the Bible. I hope that you've learned something from this podcast. Do not hesitate to go back and revise the other 4 videos. But most importantly, number 5, which is the last part, which talks about appropriate or adequate fathering, is the one that we're going into tomorrow. So stay tuned, and do not forget to subscribe and to contact us on the contacts that are at the bottom of your screen right now. Thank you for watching. God bless you.